Thank you, Amy, and thank you very much for your hospitality.
Hello, hi, my name is Juliet Macapilla, and thank you to Bianca, here she is. Thank you so much.
So I'm Anna-Marie Voorhoeven, and I've been given the privilege to host some of the meetings of the Whole World View. That started last year in June with the book of Jude Caravan, the presentation and the launch of the book in 2 lovely sessions at the House of Lords. And actually out of that group came a community that says, okay, yes, this is great. The time is now to really practice and live and be and find ways of living from this unity awareness, the whole world. So we've been gathering in small groups, in larger groups, and some of you are there. I don't know if everybody is part of that. So that's why we thought it would be great if we just started by going round. I'll start from that side so you can finish. To just so that we just have a sense of who's in the room now. And then after that, Genevieve, I don't know if you want to say a little bit more about the context, and then Floris will start, so that we actually bring in that field also here present, so that we can build on the knowledge and the experience that we're having there already, and trying to be fully present and relatively authentic as we are here now. So, you'll be speaking later, so and you can start.
So my name is Genevieve, and I am the founder of an organisation called Beyond Human Stories, and I work with people all over the world to help them hack the dominant social narratives in a variety of different forms.
Thank you. We'll follow that. My goodness. So I'm Gavin, former investment banker, and been wandering for the last 6 years, and basically engaging with various projects, and now 2018 is proper startup year for me, really. But what I'm interested in most is contributing to whole system innovation, and prototyping at larger scales. For example, special economic zones, future city sort of projects.
My name is Juliet Macapilla, and I'm here because I'm interested to educate people, and especially what is happening to our future. So anything to do with, I'm futuristic really, and I'm the founder of UK Africa Diaspora Forum. I'm also a model by profession, and I do enjoy educating people, and I love a better world. So yeah, thank you.
I'm David Renner, and I have a 3-word strapline, which is, when I can remember it, naturally nurturing nature.
My name is Tuvi. I'm an entrepreneur. This is part of what I'm doing. Established a few companies in both technology. Yes. What I'm saying is that I'm an entrepreneur, but started few companies, bringing together both technology and well-being. So I, on the one hand, research both science and technology, but on the other hand, understand very deep both about life and everything connect to this, and how we can improve our life from many aspects. I'm also director of Scientific and Medical Network, that you know that Jude was involved, which practically research how to take the science forward, or create bridge between science and other aspects which today the science cannot explain, like spirituality.
Okay.
And also personally, I'm very much interested in how we can create evolution to upgrade humanity, to help both humanity and maybe the planet.
Thank you. Amy, you want to say?
So I don't know if I introduced myself before. I'm Amy. I'm the founder of Innovation Warehouse, and very interested in how this kind of technology can be used to have a positive impact on our future.
I'm Laura. Actually, this is my first event related to this topic. I was introduced to this concept both from Gavin, whom I know for a few years, but I never had the chance to attend the events. My experience is mainly working for multifamily offices, supply relationship and also on the investment side in philanthropy. And I'm interested particularly actually in social impact investing that I was talking about just before.
My name is Dinsdale Roderick. I'm a special guest of Gavin. I currently work for an asset management company based in Switzerland, but I also run my own pension fund that I set up through setting up an algorithm and trading company. I also assist companies with ICOs, initial coin offerings, and funding and helping them get off the ground.
I'm Jane, and a little while ago I used to be a very unhappy economist. And I finally tore up my cards when I was an economics lecturer in Oxford and discovered that you could only really study anything that was environmental, where you could question things like, can you have exponential growth on a finite planet, as an option in the third term of a really cool undergraduate degree. So I'm very glad that others like Floris are still there. And I do, when I can, seek to empower people by taking apart economic jargon and raising deep questions, and it's been a lot easier since 2008. But what I've become more interested in now is working with that inner sense of what our purpose is, our collective purpose, and where we can go with the evolution of our consciousness, and how it enables and empowers us to collectively lead change and innovate and create the new.
I'm Steve. I've been working for the last 3.5 years to try and create a platform, a collaboration and funding platform to help people address the global goals for sustainable development. But for the 8 years prior to that, I worked trying to create what I described as a globally focused impact investment bank for a private sector development bank, and we couldn't get it away. It was very, very difficult to get big ideas out of the gate. So Big Crowd is really tackling that underlying problem. And part of my process is I created an economic theory called the economic food chain theory, which helps to explain why we're in a mess and how to turn that around. So I'd love to talk to you about that. And everyone else.
Stuart McIntosh founded Opus VL in '99, and that organisation, that company, is there to implement open source technologies into public and private sector companies. I've also founded Open UK, which is the Open Source Industry Association. So I'm a technologist. My world is making technology do the things people want it to do. And actually the hardest part is helping them work out what it is they want it to do. So that's the biggest part of my world. My personal mission at the minute, outside of the core of business, is helping the NHS take on open source technology and get out of this huge cyclic, never-ending problem that it has in tech.
Yeah, I can see now.
And I'm Anna Marie. I founded in 2008 the Hague Center for Global Governance, Innovation and Emergence, really looking into how, if we want to go into emergence, how do we then govern ourselves, how do we work together, what do we need to be doing differently as a social architecture, primarily looking at that, and since a few years also looking at the energetic architecture, because we got so much stuck, didn't really shift, so we thought, well, maybe if we start with doing something with the energy, with that focus, to really go into emergence, that could perhaps give us new insights. And I personally love to co-create with all of nature, really attuned to the universal heart and the cosmic beat, as I would say. So I really play in that field. And so I'm really very happy to first, do you still want to say something?
I was going to say, I think you pretty much covered it.
There comes Joe.
Hey.
Joe, we're just doing a round, saying who we are. So
sorry, I'm late.
Tell
them to just the right time.
Briefly who you are, and then you can go and get some food and settle in.
So tell them to. Introduction.
Yes.
Right. Hello, everyone. I know some of you. Oh. Joseph Clare.
So.
Part of the Worldwide Vision, and yeah, found out about tonight's meeting and wanted to come along.
So
it's lovely to see you, Emery. I didn't know you'd be here. But I'm sorry I'm late. I hope
No,
I
no,
missed too
take a
much.
chair and come here.
Take a bite, settle in.
Yes,
whilst
help yourself.
Jen is
And I just wanted to say that Juliet here has very kindly got us on live stream to multiple countries, and we currently have 100 people joining
Almost.
us in this dialogue.
Ah,
So
yes.
when people are talking, if you could just speak up a little bit, just so the people who are joining us
Actually
from
online
all
now?
over the world can hear us, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, lovely. And do we need to know how people can get in if they want to know? Is that okay? Good.
We've got people from Kenya at the moment. Thank you so much, Penny Boni, Jenny Wanje, Echesa Makanda. I thank you all for coming on. We're live here tonight, and I'm bringing you live from London. We're in the Innovation Centre, and really looking forward to this session. We've got Bishop George from America, Rashid Chaudhry from Japan, and Stephen Panda here in London. Nigel Orchard, many thanks for coming on. I'm here. We'll catch up soon. Many thanks, Gavin, for inviting us.
Okay, flawless.
I'll take it on. I press record like this. Yeah. It's recording? Great. There we go. Thank you all for being here. It started indeed on March 8th. We had this whole world view session. And we had a presentation of about half an hour, but then it basically ended a bit longer. And we said we have to plan something separate. Now, what we're going to do this evening, we're really going from the esoteric into technology, into finance, and sometimes quite profound. So it may be that you may lose out at certain points in time, but then I hope we can reconnect after a little bit later on. Please let me know if something is unclear, you want to have it specified, or if you feel uncomfortable with it, we can discuss it. There's quite a lot of slides. I tend to present this in 3 parts, but we'll just see how things go.
Can we have a copy of the slides then?
Later on, all the people that attend, we can share certain things, but we also have to be a bit careful in sharing. I'll explain that a bit later. Now, we're clearly going into a new era, and I want to talk a bit about that. We become conscious of things in a completely different way than we have been in the past. And in that consciousness, it seems like we are converging into one, but also technology is showing a kind of similar development, and in the economy we can see that. And actually these 3 developments tend to reinforce each other. Just a bit of background. I'm an economist and banker, basically by background. The last function in my traditional life I had was with ABN AMRO Bank. I was the former group head of strategy, and then in 2013 a lot of things changed. First of all, my consciousness opened up to understand a lot more things. I started to realize we need different technology to connect with each other, and economy needs something different. I've had the questionable privilege of having experienced 100 financial, monetary, systemic crises and resets, mostly in the emerging markets. And after a while you start to understand what is going wrong and why we continuously make certain mistakes. And basically, very literally, it's because we are not working as one. But we can change that. We're probably best known for the technology that we're developing, new internet technology. Although even here we tend to be a bit below the radar until things have matured sufficiently and have gained more momentum, so we can get the traction out. Because what we develop is technology that is open and where it can be free. And that is not always in the interest to many parties. So we need to get that traction first. So we come from 3 perspectives. All is becoming one. We take a look at awareness creation, economics, evolution, communication technologies, many different fields. We take a look at the technology, and then in the end we apply both the principles of unity awareness, the principles applied in technology, and we can basically make that work in financial economic solutions. So let's skip this presentation in 3 parts. I would rather first focus on the alchemia. So how are things working? When all becomes one, what is really underlying? Then we go into ICT and then in money and finance, because we need the ICT in order to make the change in money and finance. Tomorrow we may have a bit more focus on the last part, looking at Emily. But I think right now for the storyline it makes most sense to follow the design principles. We look at nature, we look at the cosmic hologram, we look at many things, then we provide it into ICT and then in money and finance. So alchemia, when all becomes one, what is happening? If we take a look at evolution, then evolution is actually nothing more than a process in time. A process in time when time is moving forward. Time is not moving backwards with evolution. Yeah, obviously. Is that relevant? Yes, that is very relevant. Because there's another law, the second law of thermodynamics, and I will go back into a bit more detail to explain this, which states that over time entropy is increasing. So if evolution is a process going forward in time, evolution is a process in which entropy is increasing. Now what is entropy? Entropy basically is a measure of possibilities. What is that? Now suppose we are all water molecules, yeah? And we sit here together and we have 0 temperature, 0 Kelvin. That means we're all iced molecules, we're not moving. What are the possibilities amongst ourselves to combine, to create, to communicate? Nothing. So our possibilities are measured as 0, when the temperature is an absolute 0. The moment the temperature is going up, we basically as water molecules start moving. We become liquid at a certain point in time, and we can actually meet each other. So a possibility can basically occur. But the moment the temperature goes up and entropy is increasing even further, we start running like crazy in this room. And the moment we hit into each other, chances are that we will have a conversation amongst water molecules, a chemical reaction, and something new emerges. So the process of entropy moving forward in evolution is that there will ever be more possibilities. The interesting thing is that it's not only that the possibilities increase over evolution, but also the way, the chances that we can create that. So first of all, in our iced stage, possibilities are not that high, so they become higher. But also the results of decombinations start to increase. So basically on 2 dimensions, the possibility and the results, we would actually expect entropy to increase exponentially over time. This is what we would expect. More possibilities and more results from which we can start to create.
Sorry, can I ask?
Yeah?
I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is our chance to. You're comparing time to temperature. So
time to entropy.
Well, entropy, so you're looking at water, you're increasing the temperature from ice to gas, and you're saying that there's more kind of interaction. But time doesn't necessarily have that effect on things. You know, time, things might go in the other direction. So are you just trying to make a point, or are you actually saying this is some kind of
what I'm
scientific?
What I'm explaining is that entropy is moving forward with time. In the past example, I tried to explain entropy as a measure of possibilities, which is 0 if everything is in a static state, not moving, not changing, not interacting. And the moment that entropy starts to interact, it is increasing exponentially. And this is something that we actually see happening in real evolution. So it takes hundreds of millions of years before something simple like a water molecule is basically being created. And now it's only thousands of years for complex life to be created. So the pace of chemical combinations, because of the interaction, is growing exponentially because there's more to react with and the possibilities to interact have increased. And this is not only life on Earth, it's also in the cosmos. We see something similar. We see something similar with human evolution. We see something similar economically when we take a look at labor specialization. The more labor specialization is out there, the more functions we get, the more new functions we can create. So this entropic view of more all, entropy is actually a measure of all. So we see that the measure of all in evolution is going up exponentially fast. That's quite interesting. Now, with entropy increasing, we also see something like syntropy increasing. And this is where we become interdependent. Suppose right now we would have a heart surgeon and we will bring her back into the hunter-gatherer stage, right? Will she add any value in the hunter-gatherer phase? Probably not, because she doesn't have an anesthetist walking around, there's no hospital, there's no equipment that she can work with, so she's over-specialized. She has become dependent in her functioning on other functions. This is also when we see life to become more complex. If we have complex life, and we bring it back into an environment that is not complex, water and rock, it is not likely to survive. So when we see a measure of all entropy increasing over time in evolution, we actually also see a measure of interdependency, a measure of one increasing over time. So a measure of syntropy. So syntropy,
Oh, sorry. Your model, ultimately, increase in entropy leads to death. It's the destruction of systems.
Yes and no, but I will get to that later. If the question still holds, please repeat it. What we see here is the interdependency is increasing, not only economically, also ecologically in other systems as well. And it seems that this is very profound when time moves forward with evolution. When we basically move from the hunter-gatherer stage to our current more collective economy, it seems also that our ego is transcending from a very personal ego into a more collective ego. Perhaps also an ego that starts to become really one. From an economic perspective and from a theoretical perspective, actually it makes sense. If we have A, B, and C, and they work separately from each other, not creating synergy, are they making more value together or less? They create more value when they come into synergy. So when we have more all and we have more one, we should have maximum economic output, theoretically. And we would expect evolution to end, at least when the maximum is being arrived, which is when all becomes one. Now, life is really made syntropic. Perhaps this helps a bit to the question posed. A cell only lives when it gets instructions from neighboring cells to do something. If the cell doesn't get any instructions anymore from neighboring cells, it dies. And it's basically being taken or eaten by the neighboring cells. And here, this is the atomic way of life. The cell, that's the atom of life, basically is programmed to die. It is syntropic in nature. This is how syntropy and entropy work together. Now, when we take a look at communication and communication technology, also here we see basically something very relevant for evolution. When we were in the hunter-gathering stage, the way we communicated was quite simple. In a group, something the size of this, except obviously for what we have online right now. But we have a relatively small group, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, and we come with a communication standard, a standard to speak. At a good day, I say something like, wow, and people understand yes, no, or I'm hungry. And that's a standard. And with that standard, we communicate and we can connect a family or a tribe. But then we want to have more all one. We want to connect more people in a setting like a village or a city and to create new functions. So we need a new communication standard, yet it's always a standard that makes people communicate and interact, whether it is verbal standard, whether it is an alphabet, whether it is a telephone or an internet protocol. It is a standard that we all recognize and which basically helps us to connect. And also these standards in information and communication technology follow the rule of evolution, ever more all into ever more one. So after the handwritten text, the alphabet, we go to machine written text and telephone and television, which is basically created for nationwide communication, and we can really work and organize in nation states. The internet really brought us the global village, because now it doesn't matter. We can just as easily communicate with Africa and Japan and the US as we can communicate with people sitting over here. And it's that standard, that communication standard, making it possible. The question is, what comes next? If we feel that evolution is a process that is reaching more all and more one, how can we maximize it? We would need to have a communication standard that connects all into one, which means we have to break information down to the atomic level, which we here call the entity, and we make all the entities interact with each other, into syntropy, into one. So the indivisible organization, the indivisible person, the indivisible product, asset, rule, transaction, and make that communicate with each other. Can we make a communication standard for this and again continue with evolution? The problem with the current internet is that we have an internet of applications, which means if I have this, I give it an identity, I store it in one of those applications. But if you have the same can, you probably give it a different identifier, and you describe it differently in your application. So we don't connect with this, at least we connect differently. It's not interoperable. And what we currently see, for instance in the supply chain, is that parties can't work together with each other, or in an ecosystem. If we all use different identifiers, if I say it's number 15, you call it AA5, you call it BA6, we're not talking about the same thing. So we need at least to identify things in a similar way, that we recognize the identifier. We need to have a same semantic vocabulary that we can apply. And there's other things that we have to standardize. And this is basically what we're starting to do, build new internet protocols for this. The world where I came from ABN AMRO, we had 10,000 interfaces connecting our IT landscape. We had so many applications, and they all had to talk with each other. And every time that legislation changed in one of the 23 jurisdictions where we were operating, boom, the entire, well, wall of dictionaries basically had to change. So that's not a very efficient way of scaling up communication and making more all into one. So this was the nightmare we had. But then we got inspiration, and that inspiration came from virtuality. The first thing we made virtual basically were our documents, our books, our Word documents, our WordPerfect documents, and we translated them into web pages. They were not physically stored in one location that was only accessible if you were there physically. No, we made a virtual document, a web document that could basically be accessed from all around the world. So the document, rather than being physical in one location, it became virtual globally. And because the document became virtual and global in an omnipresent here and now, and other documents became as well, we could start connecting those documents. So the first internet we created was an internet of virtual documents. Right now, we see technology emerging, and we basically start creating databases that become virtualized, omnipresent. But there's no standard for data to communicate with other data, not in a virtual omnipresent way. Because right now we define the standard at the application layer. Unique identifiers, semantics, how do we define stuff, cryptography, access and control management. There's no standard to do this as a global virtual network. So what we would expect the next stage to be a virtual stage of evolution, where it's not nation state or global, but we start connecting in an omnipresent here and now. More, all is one. We need new communication standards, new internet protocols that make that possible. Now, the interesting thing, if we look at evolution, we basically started with our physical survival bodies, hunter-gatherer phase. Then we started using our physical working bodies, our mental and physical body in the industrial age. Right now it's predominantly our mental body, but we will get into a virtual body, which becomes really relevant. Because if I can do a handshake in 8 countries simultaneously, that's not my physical or my mental body, that's my virtual body. We're not yet very aware of our virtual bodies as of now, because they're still application bound. But the moment they become virtually omnipresent, it will change things. But what is relevant here, we go from concrete manifestation into abstract potential. Virtuality is quite abstract, but very potential. The concrete manifestation, the physical body, that's something different. So we see this gradual shift. What does it say? When we take a look at the creation process itself, we start with potential, information or energy. It remains potential, information or energy, but the moment I get an intention, I actually may start doing something with that. That intention leads typically to inspiration, to thoughts. Those thoughts lead to action, and that action leads to manifestation. So, what we see actually in evolution is that we go from manifestation in the hunter-gatherer phase to working, to the mental body, etc. Can we say that evolution is an inverted process of creation? Is this what evolution actually tries to do? And this is what we try to test. So, the moment we start at the hunter-gatherer phase, we have the inverted creation, the one with last column. We start with manifestation. The working body is typically action. Industry is thought and action. We have thought, mental body, in the information age. Would we then now come into the age of intention with our virtual bodies? And would we in the end up being potential? We've taken verbs next to this. These verbs basically appear in any language, and they're quite important, as you will see later, when we start building the semantic internet. When we try to word map evolution to this model, does it make sense? We get, gather, take, kill, exploit. Right after that you start to work, fabricate, produce, manufacture. If we would now be in the age of intention, and we talk about sustainability, sharing economy, distributed, circular, those are all intentions. We want to create with intentions. So we shift from thoughts towards intentions, and it's with the intentions that we just start a journey and innovate and start doing. We become conscious that we actually can determine what we think by determining what we intend to do. And intentions become important. Now, computer code itself is intentions. We basically put in intentions when we write computer code. Go do that. That's my intention. We enter the age of self-learning. We enter the age of self-making. When we initiate a process of self-learning or self-making, that's a very strong intention, because it will continue to do that. is that actually something that we want? Infinite intention. Or don't we do that? Perhaps that is the big challenge of the virtual age, the intentional age, where artificial intelligence may not be programmed intention neutral, or should it be neutral in the end? This is what we may actually have to learn in the coming stage. Now, I'm going to make a bit of a leap, because when we talk about all oneness, is there something in biology, in the cosmic universe, where we can say, is there something that we have an example like all is one? And perhaps light could be a good example. Now, first, when we take a look at light, we see light from the past, going to the present, moving into the future. But that's the way how we see it as humans. From light itself, when it travels with the speed of light, time doesn't change. So light was there in its now, here in its now, and there in its now. So light in that sense is truly omnipresent in the here and now. That was from a time perspective. We can also take it from a distance perspective. This is a bit technical. The Lorentz contraction formula basically says that when something moves with the speed of light, distance disappears. We as humans, we cannot imagine, but light really behaves like that. It is in an omnipresent, ever-present here and now. This is quite relevant. Light is non-dualistic in the sense it holds both the particle and the wave. We can only see particle or wave when we observe with a specific. We can't see particle and wave at the same time. But we know light is particle and wave at the same time, both together. This is weird. Now, what is even more weird, so we have light as a particle, which we can measure. In example 1, light as a wave, which you obviously also can see when we do a test. But this test is the third test is pretty relevant. The moment I put photons through what we call the double slit screen, they basically produce a wave pattern, but they produce two waves. And the two waves basically start interfering, producing tops and bottoms, where they basically level each other out. And then you get the what you see underneath on that screen, that kind of wave pattern, interference pattern, I have to say. The moment I put in one photon, it also produces a wave. That's interesting. But the moment I put my hand on one of the slits, it doesn't. What we realize, how can the photon create a wave with itself? And this is what quantum physics basically shows. It can only create that pattern if it basically has put every trajectory from A to B. Again, this omnipresent, ever-present characteristic. When we store light into a hologram, just like we record a sound as a sound field, something quite interesting happens. When we basically break up the hologram, the picture reappears. The picture itself is not lost. Yet, because of the size of the hologram, the resolution, the information is a bit less. But what we've just seen is that light doesn't have size constraints. So, if you would consider this information, light literally is divisible, infinite information containing all one. Now, let's move a bit further towards this dualistic aspect that we as humans try to have a problem with. Because we can only see light as particle or wave and not together. When we take a look at Einstein's formula, and we basically see internal potential leading to external expression, we see energy being mass. Except we can only see one of the two. Mathematically, Einstein can show they're both the same, but we can only, with our limited consciousness, observe only one of the two. The same counts for the cycle of life, going from a seed to a flower and a fruit, and back to a seed. And we do see in many different walks of life, thoughts, feelings, philosophies, that the dualistic and non-dualistic principles come back. They're being described in many different ways. When we go the more esoteric route into religion and philosophical and spiritual reflections, we do see that the all is one principle comes back almost anywhere. Whether it is in Taoism, the Tawhid in Islam, the Advaita in Hinduism, but also in Platonism, the Aim, the Catholic Church, according to the whole, Kataholos, but even in love, we see that things become one, they become in harmony. Just an example in Christianity, when you take a look at the creed of the Christian faith that was made in 325 after Christ, we basically see a story that is about all oneness. We can consider that to be the roots of Christianity. Sorry, I wanted to make a picture. When we take a look at Genesis, and this is quite interesting. We basically go in Genesis 2 to 4, so after the 7 days of creation. We basically see that we fall out of heaven. And the story that is being told is a story where we basically come out of our potential. We are free to eat from any tree in the garden. But then Adam and Eve basically have an intention not to be aligned with God's will anymore. So the creation process starts with intention. And they eat from the tree of knowledge, which is the next phase, the mental body, of duality, good and evil. Your eyes will be opened, it's desirable for gaining wisdom, and we have fallen into a state of duality. After that, we basically are cursed to the ground, and we have to work by the by the sweat of your brow. You will eat your food from it. We become into the physical world. Then afterwards, we obviously go into the hunter-gatherer phase when Cain kills Abel. So this is the story. We're basically the opposite of the evolutionary path, which is the fall out of heaven, out of our potential. This may be a bit esoteric, so if you don't have connections with this, leave it for what it is. But we do see in many esoteric traditions that we basically go from physical form, our physical body, into our light body. And obviously, if light resembles all oneness, it makes sense that that is our evolutionary or spiritual path to follow. Now, if we would create from all oneness to a specific manifestation, and evolve from specific manifestation to all oneness, what would happen? We would probably see a picture like this. But after our virtual age, where we are confined to a Gaian omnipresent here and now, we could actually go to our light bodies, which are ever-present, omnipresent here and now. If we have a creation process and an evolution process, would it not make sense that they appear with each other in a kind of cycle? That we first have some creation, involution process, then an evolution process, and then going back. That's the hypothesis to check. Now, there is a process in which the Earth has an actual precession of almost 26,000 years. And if we start mapping, so basically that's what the axis is doing. But what we can basically see here to the world, in the cosmos, we basically see the precision of the equinox, where every 2000ths of the year we go into another zodiacal sign. We're now entering into Aquarius. When we take a look at this and we try to plot what happened in two cycles of duality and non-duality, we actually do see something strange happening. When we take a look back over the past 13,000 years, we see basically human civilizations. When we take a look in the second 13,000 years, we hardly see evidence of human civilization. Actually, there's no human fossil finds in the period between 50,000 years ago to about 20,000 years ago. So the question here is there indeed a point where we would use our light bodies and would that become more manifest, and then we change back into an era of duality and we start to re-emerge in our physical form? Would that be the case? When we take a look even further, so when we go from 39,000 years to 26,000 years ago, this is what we're doing, we should again reappear on Earth, right? And indeed, 30,000 years ago, it seems that human civilization starts to spread out again in quite a similar way to what it did in the past, I would say 10,000 years. And then suddenly, they disappear. What's happening here? Are we indeed changing into light bodies? We don't know. When we take a look, this is something,
Sorry, what disappears?
human life forms. There's no human fossil finds in this period. So there's human fossil finds in this period, 39,000 years ago to 26,000 years ago. Here there are really a few, here there are really a few, but here there are none. They completely aren't there anymore. And then the pattern may re-emerge here.
But where's the data coming from?
Sorry?
Where's the data coming from to support that?
There's plenty you can find, even on something simple like Wikipedia, where you see what are the human fossil finds over history.
I'm not sure I trust Wikipedia.
Well, no,
that,
but really, there's quite some evidence of this. There's just a gap missing. And I'm not saying this is the case, but it's just a coincidence that may merit some further investigation. Taking this to what the Hindus say about this, they basically, and also Plato by the way, they apply an astrological system which consists of different timings, where they say the golden age is the age of Satya, which is actually that period where we don't find human fossil finds. And then around this point, when we take a look at Plato, he basically says this is the fall of Atlantis. This is when basically that empire is no longer there. And we start seeing the first civilizations emerge in these ages. This is about the year 0, and we're about right now a bit here. This is obviously a mapping of the Hindu yugas into what we would call the zodiacal wave precision of the equinoxes, if they would match. Whatever it seems, evolution appears this process of more allness and more oneness. In one way or another, it could indeed go from one stage to the other. We don't know yet. But it's interesting to explore this a bit further. If we would come and define alchemic design principles for all oneness, this is what we basically try to do in the first part, the alchemical part. We come with freedom, subsidiarity, entropy, or all facilitation, because apparently evolution wants to be more all. Entropy is a measure of all. Entropy is increasing, and evolution is increasing. We're going further. What is also important is symmetry. The laws of the cosmic laws are basically available everywhere. It's not that they apply differently here than that they apply there. If they would be different, then it would not facilitate one. We also take a look at an agnostic approach. It should be suitable for all. One, united in space-time. Ambiguity. One interpretation only. And it can be in different ways. Of all and of no one, which is quite relevant. Scalable. Non-dualistic. I will come back later to that on the financial side. Low cost, low friction. You want to have as much all included as possible. Ease of use, it should be simple. It should indeed have the ability to be really inclusive for everyone. And all oneness when it comes to identification, authentication, encryption. We indeed can include standards for inclusion. And the semantics, one language for all. I will come back to that later, how we can make it. But all these principles that we basically derive out of the storyline lead to all oneness. And that is probably what evolution wants us to achieve. So, perhaps a moment for break, rest, reflection, or questions before moving on towards ICT and how we apply these principles, and then we can see what's basically happening over there.
Boris, I've really been enjoying the fascinating picture that's unfolding. Thank you very much. I've got one query, which I think is an oversimplification. It doesn't necessarily destroy the journey, but it's when you portray hunter-gatherer societies as being essentially more primitive. There are some indigenous peoples now who exist with very low material technology, but some very highly developed human aptitudes. This can include, for example, remote viewing. So they don't necessarily need, and we have a preference here. We assume that the answer has to come from technology, but there are other ways of doing things.
Absolutely, and actually the second part of the story explains that there's a lot of knowledge, which includes this knowledge, that we should not take that linear view on evolution. So it really supports actually what you're saying. Yeah. But from an anthropic, it explains the options of entropy a bit, in social economic sense. But you're absolutely right, this is a correction that needs to be made in the storyline. In the second part, it becomes clear that they have that consciousness which died a bit more, I would say, the more industrialized societies, which they still have. And we should really learn from that. It's really a gift that we can learn from.
There's quite a few concepts that you covered pretty quickly, and I'm kind of struggling to thread them all together in the context of why we're here. Is it possible you can kind of summarize part one, for laymen like me?
Basically what we try to do here, we look at evolution, cosmic design, and we take out these principles, these 30 principles for all oneness, and we start applying that in ICT and into money and finance. And then we see that a completely different internet will arise in the way we connect and work with each other and live with each other, which becomes user-centric. We own and control our own data, no longer the application providers of this world. So that's from the ICT perspective. When we apply this to money and finance, we see that we will have an alternative for debt finance. And actually when we introduce that, it will erode the debt economy.
So you're basically saying it's natural design principles that can be applied to finance and life with the ICT.
Correct.
Essentially is the layer that connects it all.
Yeah,
Is that
ICT
right?
is a technology that facilitates, and with that facilitation we can also have different financial management systems.
There was something you said about the, in terms of the oneness and in terms of there was kind of an assumption that the entropy and the progression of the entropy would lead to more opportunities and better connectivity. But my experiences so far is the more you increase specialism, the more you create brittleness in the system, and you have a collective stupidity, because the language of one part of finance is very subtly different to another part, and they just can't communicate. So if you take development finance, and if you take impact investment, and if you take ESG and CSR focused activity and triple bottom line activity, they're all talking a very similar game, and they really have got no ability to communicate or collaborate efficiently. So we have siloed, thinking in the extremes. I'm not so sure, while technology can play a part, one of my recent realizations is we live in a transaction world and we don't live in a relationship world. Mm-hmm. And unless we're able to transcend from those transactions that people are mentally swiping left all the time, the heuristics, because we just cannot process the volume of information these days. So people more and more and more are trying to do transactions and failing because they're not building in the capacity to actually build relationships and better understanding, so that people in the room or in different events can figure out how to actually get things done that will create a better world. It's just like the inefficiency, which kind of brings it back to entropy. The inefficiency is massive, but I'm not sure, I'm not getting the link between how we change that in your model.
So entropy, this is a simplistic representation. It's not a continuous linear process or exponential process. Actually, it's quite in hyperboles, because we get into new states with new challenges, and something breaks down and we invent something else and we continue.
So you also talked about intent, and intent being a key part.
Yes.
And
indeed, when you go in the transactional, rational algorithm world, which we're entering right now, you will see indeed that relations will probably end up to be more valuable, and that we will define value in different ways. This is really the challenge of these times.
That also presupposes people care and have a positive intent, and I'm not sure that many do, if I'm being honest.
This is exactly why we're in this age. This is what we will have to find out. Just like we figure out that intent is more important than the ratio. Because we create from that, and now we have to become conscious. What do we do with intentions?
So it's very fascinating hearing you and bringing together so many different kind of perspectives. I have a question around boundaries. So you've kind of created a theory or a model of how
a story about all becoming one.
All becoming one, and so I'd just like if you can perhaps reassure me, answer this question in terms of, sometimes, let's say, if we go back and look at the stock market over the last 50 years, we can go back and we can look and we can write an algorithm that would have performed at 30% annual rate of return, I don't know, something like 100% annual rate of return. And then we can come to this moment in time and say, this is the algorithm, it's worked for the last 50 years, it will carry on. So just if you can explain to me, I'm sure there is an answer to this, why what you've done is a complete kind of analogy of the evolution process and not just a kind of model of a snapshot of a part of that process.
Can I also add to that question, on a similar vein? You jumped from the wave-particle duality of light, Lorentz contraction, twin paradox, to theology. And to me, you've gone from a quantum mechanical environment to a highly complex social argument in one step. And I'm confused.
Okay.
Basically, what we've done is taken the story from all becoming one from different perspectives. And,
but that's just cherry picking, with respect. Sorry, that's just cherry picking. Because you're taking bits of quantum mechanics and saying, yes, because light has a wave-particle duality, and you gave an example of how to show that light has momentum in effect, and then you're using the collision theory, and then all of a sudden you're onto religion and quite complex theological and economic systems that involve human emotions and religion and thought. It just doesn't mesh as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, well, I think this is a preference where people have different preferences. Some, this story resonates more than with others. That's why I include it. There is this, perhaps one slide, and perhaps I've gone a bit too fast over that, where many esoteric traditions consider a light body to be the fundamental body of human beings or beings. And I've taken that story perhaps a bit from quantum physics, light body, into religion a bit too easily.
Can I just say?
But it's also because not everyone has really.
Can I just add a little bit? What is for me fascinating? I'm researching this for many years, more than 20 years, in all this area, both from physics and science on the one hand, and from psychology and medicine, and but also from spirituality. And I check all this from very open-minded, without any background of religious something like this, to try to see what is the real reality. And I came to exactly the same conclusion. And I can tell you, I've got presentation, which is a lot of this very similar to this. The problem is that what you've done for many years, similar to me, to present it in 1 hour and to see all this, it's really a challenge that it's really almost impossible, because each one of these is a huge story. Just to explain, if you are not familiar with the esoteric story, what it is, this by itself can take, a few days, just to explain this creation. And to explain just the physics also, to understand what is non-duality, and to understand from psychological point of view, each one of these. I can tell you, I was involved in seminars, that each one of these can be few days, each one of these subjects. To put all of them together in 1 hour, okay, it's really impossible to understand. So it's not, I don't see it as a challenge for each one of us. It's summarized like a life work, similar to, that's what I can see. So from this point of view,
But is it also not just showing the patterns, pattern recognizing that we're seeing these patterns and that these principles
But you
seem
can
to
take the Bible and read the Bible and form a religion from it, and then someone else can take the same Bible, read the same text, and form another religion.
Yes.
With respect, quantum mechanics is pretty pure. I mean, it's not quite, but it's close. String theory and Lorentz contraction and particle behavior, and then you're into theology and human systems that involve human emotion, human reactions. We're not simple-celled organisms.
I agree. All that I'm saying, to explain all this in 1 hour, it's really impossible, because each one of these aspects, you can discuss it for more than 1 day. All that I'm saying that by coincidence, I heard him the first time. I heard before a short presentation, and I heard the same today. But I can show you presentations I've got. I can bring tomorrow, and you can see very similar on each one aspect, on the evolution. I researched the evolution myself. I started, I just told him today, when I was a student, I took a course about evolution, and I realized, and I learned it deep, that it's not enough. That the explanation of the Darwin evolution is only half of the truth. And I came to the same, and I tried to research deeper. From statistical point of view, it's not answer. So, but to explain all this in 1 hour, I really think it's impossible. Mm-hmm. So what is done, it just show a little bit, just, a glimpse of everything.
Context.
So you cannot answer to all this in 1 hour, okay? That's what tomorrow we've got a full day, a little bit to go deeper.
Perhaps it would help to look at, if you're saying it's natural system design, which the implication is we have veered off course, with our economic and our financial systems.
Yeah, and that's the third part, and there we will really show it, because we are dualistic. This is what we will show. We will come to that later.
You're right.
So rather than look at it from, and I kind of agree, when it gets very esoteric, it kind of gives me lots of red flags, just because it's too much information, first of all, And you know, 7 big ideas in 20 minutes is too many even for me.
Yes.
And it's just I think it kills the message, because there's something here that's really great, but I'm one who makes this mistake more than most, so yeah, I'm putting my hands up and saying I'm guilty. And it's just it's not necessary, because actually what you were saying at the beginning, it's there's natural laws, you know, that are to do with thermodynamics and to do with, you know, string theory, etc. And they're irrefutable, regardless of whatever else.
Yes.
And you know, at some point we get off. And my hypothesis is we're going to get back to that.
The summary is beautiful, exactly. That's what he tried to say, and he summarized in 2 minutes. Brilliant.
But you'll go home now.
Okay, let's get start getting into duality, but
As you go on break, we've got people. Thank you so much. Sarah Shep says to you, really interesting. Thank you, Stephen from Colchester, for watching. William Mantal, we bring you on. Ruth W. Kilonzo Wekule, I wave at you as well. And I've got people watching from Paul Njuguna from Kenya as well. You've got a question here. In Africa, how do you bring people in one when there is so many tribalism there? So
Yes.
there's a question coming in for you.
is it okay that will be part of the second and the third part? And if the question still remains,
Okay.
I'm happy to provide another answer. But this is really what we will discuss in part 2 and part 3.
Thank you so much. The answer will be given in part 2, part 3. Time difference in different parts of the country, world. If you're still with us, this video will be posted in and you will see it. Many, many thanks. We are going on break. Please do log in back. Thank you.
Yeah, we want to have a short break and then reconvene in 5-10 minutes or something.
Anybody want some tea or coffee? Or
Just 5 minutes, I think,
Yeah.
because it's quite late.
Okay, I'll give a warning at 5 minutes.
Thank
4
you.
minutes, so that you can come back.
Hello, hi. I hope you're all watching this. My name is Juliet Macapila. You can follow me at hashtag Juliet, sorry, I repeat again, at JNM1000, JNM1000. We're going on break. This is really fascinating. So most of you know how much I'm interested in all these theories. So here tonight again, I'm looking into how ICT impacts upon all of us. But it is interesting to see all these theories and what really builds our world. So I'm enjoying this and really finding it interesting as well. But I'm quite different in what I think. I think that we are all already one. I also think that when human beings can learn how to become one, when human beings appreciate that they are all one and made with love of one another, then I believe that we will have discovered ourselves. I believe that